right, we're queued up. East Coast time, West Coast time. I can't see. Oh, we're good to go. Good evening and welcome to the June 11th, 2018 meeting of the Shawnee City Council. I would ask that you please silence your electronic devices at this time. I'm Matt Zimmerman, Council President and Council member from Ward 1, and I will be chairing this meeting. Mayor Disler is absent tonight. I'll begin with roll call. Councilman Neighbor.
Present.
Councilman Jenkins.
Present.
Councilman Kemling.
Present.
Councilwoman Meyer.
Present.
Councilman Adrian is absent. Councilman Sandifer.
Present.
And Councilwoman Constance. Thank you. All right, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. And I'm going to ask the Girl Scout Troop number 3352 to join me at the front and lead us all in Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the for which it stands, liberty and justice for all. She was right. She had a great voice. Did you see her face? She was just crimson. They're so timid, you can't make it out what we're seeing.
I have 3 daughters and 2 of them are Girl Scouts. That was kind of fun to do for me. Thank you. Next, I will explain our procedures for public input. During the meeting, I will offer the opportunity for public input. If you would like to speak to the council at any of those times, please come forward to the microphone. I will ask that you state your name and address for the record, then you may offer your comments. So that members of the audience can hear your comments, I would ask that you speak directly into the microphone. By policy, comments are limited to 5 minutes, and no person may speak more than twice to any one agenda item. After you're finished, please sign the form on the podium to ensure we have an accurate record of your name and address. In addition, while we won't do a roll call vote on every vote, I will state council members' names who vote in minority so that our listening audience will have a clear and accurate record of the votes. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Does anyone have an item that they'd like to remove from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will accept a motion to approve the consent agenda as is.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is mayor's items. Tonight, we're going to recognize some of the participants of the Shawnee Shine Up. So for those of you that are not aware, May is Shawnee Shine Up month, and we have some volunteers with us that are going to get a little award. And Elizabeth, if you can join me at the front. This is a certificate of appreciation. Want to read that? Turn around and read that? Everybody? Ladies, thank you. Now that they're all famous, all right. The only other item under mayor's items is to conduct an executive session for the privilege of receiving attorney-to-client privileged communications for the purpose of protecting the confidentiality of those communications. I'll accept a motion to recess to executive session for 20 minutes for the purpose of receiving attorney-to-client privileged communications for the purpose of protecting the confidentiality of those communications. At the conclusion of the executive session, the meeting will reconvene in the city council chambers. Do I have a motion to recess?
So moved. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are going to adjourn to executive session for 20 minutes.
I move to conclude the executive session.
Second. Aye. So moved.
Second. Aye.
Aye.
Next item, appointments. Item number 1 is to consider the appointments and reappointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals, Civil Service Commission, Planning Commission, and Visit Shawnee Advisory Committee. Mayor Disler is recommending appointments and reappointments to the various boards and commissions. One motion will approve the entire slate as presented. The recommended action is to consider approving the slate of candidates. Is there any discussion from the council? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this? Again, this one vote will, the whole slate, correct. So I will accept a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, as I look around, I think I've recognized many of those volunteers that are here in the council chambers that are being appointed and reappointed. Can I ask you all to stand up, please, and be recognized? Don't be shy. My sincere thanks to each and every one of you for your time serving the city as volunteer. Next item is business from the floor. Is there anyone who has comments on an issue that is not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will proceed to public items. Item number 1 is to conduct a public hearing to consider ordinance number 3226, establishing the Belmont Promenade Redevelopment District. On May 14th, 2018, the governing body approved a resolution setting June 11th, 2018 as the date for the public hearing to consider establishing the Belmont Promenade Redevelopment District. There are 3 recommended actions. The first is to conduct a public hearing. I need a motion to conduct a public hearing.
So moved.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are now in public hearing. This is a formal public hearing required by law. Public hearing will begin with a presentation from Tom Calico, the city's financial advisor from Springstead, who will make a presentation. After the presentation, I will ask council members if they have any questions specifically related to the presentation. And I will then ask if there are any comments from the public. Once the public hearing is closed, we will have a council discussion followed by a motion. Tom, it's all yours.
Created city's financial advisor. Happy to open up your public hearing, give you some background for the benefit of your public hearing on the Belmont Promenade project. Tonight's action items that you have before you is of course to hold the public hearing. Over the course of my presentation, I will cover some background on the project, the project itself, the particulars of the project itself, the incentives that are being requested, and the results of some financial studies that my firm prepared. And then you'll have, at the conclusion of the public hearing, an opportunity to consider an ordinance adopting the TIF district plan. And the TIF district plan essentially sets the boundaries, creates the district. There will be additional actions that the council will have to take in order to finally conclude the TIF district and to put the community improvement district that's associated with it, to put it in place. This is the first step in the process. And as was alluded to in your preparatory remarks, this is essentially kind of a redo. There is a plan, there is a district in place, so this is essentially a substitute district, as future actions will be substitutes as well. This is the location. You've got Shawnee Mission Parkway up on the north, Mauer on the, what would it be? You know, as an ex-city manager, you'd think I would really be good at my geography. So it's Mauer's on the east. Thank you. My dad always used to kid me, how can you do this for a living and not have a good sense of geography? So a little proposal, or a little comparison between the prior project and the current one. So the previous project was a 26-acre site, 8 parcels. That remains the same. There was 150,000 square feet to 200,000 square feet of inline retail. We're saying now it's approximately 200,000 square feet. There was 35,000 square feet to 65,000 square feet of commercial retail on 5 to 7 pad sites. We've got 2 pad sites in this plan. Of course, the associated public and private infrastructure, that's the same. At that point, in the last project, we were anticipating 1 to 2 phases. This, we believe, at this point, will be constructed all at once in a single redevelopment project. The real big difference probably is the mixed-use segment. There's a mixed-use portion of the project with approximately 230 apartment units and about 12,000 square feet of commercial/retail. So that's probably the biggest change. It's a little tough to read, but you can see on the north side the inline retail. Just below that, there is a restaurant plaza, and then in the corner the 2 pad sites, and then off you can see at the very bottom the mixed use and the associated retail. The developer is the same, Legacy Development, with Dan Lowe as the point person. Also from Legacy on the development team, we have Heather Trower, Steve Beaumont, I think you know of Beaumont Commercial Services. John Hanson is the developer's public financial advisor with IRR, and Greg Musil is their attorney. Some of Legacy's projects that you may be familiar with around the metropolitan area, of course, the Legends in KCK, Ward Parkway Shopping Center, which I think if you've been out there recently, the restaurant plaza that is at Ward Parkway, I think there are some similarities to what's being proposed here. Liberty Commons, Oak Park Crossing, Olathe Station, and Truman's Marketplace in Grandview. So the requested incentives, the total estimated project cost is a little over $92 million. So we kind of break that down now. We've got the developer investment, which is about $30.7 million of that amount. Third-party investment, which is principally going to be the investment in the mixed-use portion and the 2 pad sites. That third-party investment is anticipated to be a little over $40 million. The incentives request is $21,437,000. That is made up of $19,500,000 to be paid from the tax increment financing district and the proposed community improvement district sales tax and special assessment. It's important to recognize that $19,500,000 is the principal amount to be repaid in reimbursable projects. There will be financing costs and interest on top of that. There's also proposed to be a IRB, which is industrial revenue bond, issued for that for the sole purpose of allowing the project to realize a sales tax exemption on the construction materials. And then an excise tax waiver of a little over $200,000. All those together make up the $21 million and change of incentives. The tax increment financing will be in place for 20 years per the state statute. Important to recognize here is with this new district being put in place of the old and with the plan that's going to be proposed later, the tax increment financing plan that will follow, we will be essentially resetting the 20-year clock. So we'll get the full 20 years as statutorily permitted. TIF, as you know, is the capture of tax increment and the redirection of it. It comes in 2 flavors. You get the property tax and the sales tax. What's proposed is to capture and redirect 90% of the incremental increase in property taxes. So the remaining 10% will continue to flow to all the taxing entities as it would normally have without TIF. On the sales tax side, the only capture and redirection will be of the city's 1% general sales tax. It will not apply to any of the city's special purpose sales taxes, nor will it apply to the county's sales tax. The community improvement district has a statutory term of 22 years. What's proposed is a 1.6% community improvement district sales tax that would apply to all businesses within the community improvement district, which boundaries will be coterminous with the tax increment financing district. So they'll be one and the same. All the businesses that I showed you on the site plan earlier would all be within the CID. What was proposed previously, you may recall, was a 1.3% sales tax. So this is an increase from what you saw for the last district in the last plan. The special assessment, though, remains the same. What was proposed previously and is still proposed is a community improvement district special assessment on all land within the community improvement district that would total approximately $265,000 annually. So cumulatively collecting from all the properties about $265,000 annually.
Tom, before we leave the slide there, can we go over one small thing? There is a difference between the previous proposal and this proposal relative to the mill levy, which goes to the school district. Could you cover that?
Yeah, be happy to. Let me just tell you what. I was going to do that, and I'll just jump ahead. So one of the things that we were asked to do is to look at what would be the impact to the city and of the district. And so the city does have, and I'm going to get to the school because it's at the bottom of the slide, but the city's benefit is about $2.9 million from the uncaptured property tax and the special purpose sales taxes that I spoke of previously. If you do that on a present value standpoint, it's about a little over $2 million. From the school district, of course, the 20 mil that is imposed statewide for public education, that, as per state statute, is not captured by TIF. But a relatively new change is the capital outlay levy for school districts is now also exempt. And so with the prior district, it was capturing that 8 mil capital outlay levy. Now that we're resetting it, the 8 mil school district capital outlay levy will be exempt. And that we're calculating that that's going to generate about $1.59 million for the school district over the life of the TIF. That's future value.
9 and then 2.1 million again, the gross
Sure.
total in PV.
Yeah, be happy to. So the 2.9 represents basically if we just take up each year's forecasted collections and we just add the column up,
Okay.
that's it. So it's the future value. So you might wonder, okay, well, if I were given that amount today, understanding that,
How much
right,
it
the
is
time
today.
value of money, I could invest it and it would make money. What would be the equivalent? And so at a present value rate of 4.5%, it's 2.12.
Okay.
Sometimes people like to look at it both ways.
Thank you.
Let's see. Where was it? Quick comparison then between the 17 plan and the 2018. You can see here total estimated project cost is up significantly from 59 to a little over 92 million. The developer investment is up from about 22.8 million to 30.7. Third-party investment also up from 15.3 to 40.4. And the total incentive request actually about the same, pretty close to the same. One of the things we've talked about previously, and I wanted to include this in the presentation because I'm cognizant of the fact that we have some folks who are new on the council, is the tax increment financing and community improvement district incentive, the 19.5 million, is to be paid through the issuance of bonds, specifically special obligation bonds. And then this is something that may be unfamiliar to you, so I wanted to go ahead and I apologize for those of you who have heard this before, but I wanted to go ahead and include it. When a city issues special obligation bonds for this purpose, these bonds will be payable from, the debt service will be paid from exclusively the project revenues, which in this case are the property tax increment, the sales tax increment, the CID sales tax, and the CID special assessment. So what happens if those those revenue streams are not sufficient to pay the debt service. You may wonder, okay, is the city then obligated to make up any difference? And the answer to that is no. Investors will specifically be told, and they will understand that these are the sources of revenue that are available to them, and they will know what the risks are. And I'll talk a little bit later about some safeguards that we anticipate putting in place. Another common question is, well, what if something were to go wrong? What does this do to the city's bond rating? And the answer is, it will not affect the city's bond rating. The rating agencies make a very big separation between, say, your general obligation bond rating and this type of bonds. What we've talked about previously, and I'll reiterate, is if a city has a bond like this go into default, there's usually no real repercussions to the city itself, other than obviously it's a bit of an embarrassment. If you were to have multiple bonds like this go into default in a relatively short period of time, it would create uncertainty in the market about, is this city really doing what it needs to do to put good projects out there? And it would make it more difficult to sell bonds of this type. That is probably the most significant of the potential impacts. So a little bit about how these bonds get issued. The first is that the city selects the financing team. That's actually already been done here. We have Stifel Nicholas as our underwriter. We've selected a revenue consultant as well, GAI. So that team is more or less in place. Of course, you've got Kutak, Joe Serrano and his firms representing you as bond counsel, and Springstead, my firm, as your municipal advisor. There are a lot of due diligence questions that the developer will be asked to respond to in the process of underwriting these bonds. There will be certain all the legal authorities that have to be in place will need to be in place. So the TIF, the CID, all these things will have to be in place before the bonds can be issued. The developer will be asked to provide what are called guaranteed maximum price contracts. So these are essentially contracts with their construction folks that say, we can and will build it for this cost. Because you can imagine, right, if you're an investor in these bonds, the last thing that you want is you make your investment and then they think they can build a project at this amount, and then they find out later it's this amount and the project doesn't get built. That's a real problem for you as an investor. So you want an assurance that the project can be built. Proof of site control, of course, and then very importantly, signed, committed tenant leases and land sale contracts, because that's the piece that the market feasibility consultant will be using to make their forecast, right? They're going to look at who the specific tenants are, the committed tenants, and they will use their expertise then and say, okay, based on that, we think the revenues will be this. The underwriter then takes the revenue consultant's study and from that extrapolates how much in bonds that revenue stream can support. So it becomes the leases and the land sale contracts really become key. So the underwriter, like I said, taking that information. The other thing that an underwriter does is they'll be looking in the bond structure. And here's where I should probably touch on another change between when we talked about this last and now. What's being proposed is what's called a senior subordinate bond structure. One of the safeguards that you typically see in a project like this is a coverage ratio. Instead of, obviously you don't want to be on the wire, right? You don't want to be saying, okay, we've got a projected $1 of revenue for every $1 of debt service. That leaves you no margin for error. So typically in a project like this, you're going to see anywhere from $1.25 to as much as maybe even $1.50 of projected revenue for each $1 of debt service, with most projects coming in about $1.30 to $1.35. And that's where I would expect this project to land, somewhere in that area. So what can happen is, what's key here and what's changed is the treatment of that coverage. Previously, what we had anticipated was if let's say we projected at a $1.30 of revenue for each dollar of debt service. And if we hit our projections right, we'd have 30 cents extra on every dollar, or excuse me, we'd have 30 cents extra on for each dollar of debt service. And what we anticipated was that we would take that 30 cents and we would pay off the debt faster. In order to try and squeeze more bond proceeds available to pay the reimbursable project costs, what's being proposed now is that instead we'll take that coverage and we're going to apply it to a subordinate bond. This bond only gets paid to the degree that we have coverage. Right, so we still have that same coverage on the senior bond, but on the subordinate, it's all contingent on getting that coverage. This does have the desired effect from the developer's standpoint of trying to bridge their gap of, like I say, squeezing more net bond proceeds available to pay reimbursable project costs. But there is a trade-off, and the trade-off is it is unlikely, or certainly less likely, that the bonds will pay off early. And that's the important point to keep in mind. Other things that the underwriter will look at, market feasibility, consultant's revenue forecast. They'll weigh in on the projected interest, coverage we talked about, debt service reserves. We would anticipate having a debt service reserve, probably some reserves for untenanted space. There may be a small portion of the space that's untenanted at the time we issue the bonds. There might be a reserve where we hold that out until that space is tenanted. Financing costs, they'll weigh in on all those things. There'll be a whole series of bond and offering documents prepared. And in those documents, particularly the offering documents, there will be all the potential risks will be disclosed. And I will tell you that the audience to which we will be marketing these bonds is specifically what we generally refer to as sophisticated investors. These are institutions and high net worth individuals who routinely buy this kind of debt. So the types of disclosures we'll be making will not be surprises to them. These are people who make investments in these types of things, and we're going to restrict, there will be a restriction in the people who can invest in these bonds specifically to make sure that the folks who are investing them understand and can bear the risks. So that's, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So I'll pause there. Any questions on the special obligation bonds? So a couple of things I need to cover in order for you to get on with your public hearing. There is a conservation study that is required at this stage of the tax increment financing process. It was originally conducted in 2014. There's been an update now. The conclusion is, as it was back in 2014, that the area does meet a conservation area requirement under the TIF statute, which essentially is that that 50% of the structures within the study area are at least 35 years old. There are other requirements, but that's the primary. One of the things that Shawnee asks us to do by policy is take a look at the need for assistance, ask and answer the but-for question. In other words, but for the incentive that's being provided, would the project likely to happen? And so the way we do that is we do that by examining the scenario that the project doesn't receive an incentive. So we focus on that scenario. So if the project were to receive no incentive, is it likely to occur in the current market? And we base our conclusions on the anticipated net income, which produces what's called an internal rate of return, which is kind of the gold standard by which development projects are measured. So without incentive, the return is below the market range. So without assistance, we're projecting an internal rate of return of 3.51%. The market range for projects of this type is 7.41% to 16.19%, with an average of about 13.10%. And that information, that range, comes from realtyrates.com investor survey from the second quarter of this year. That is a survey of investors and the types of returns that they would expect for projects of various types. One of the things that we do to just further test whether the project is likely to happen without assistance is we do some sensitivity analysis. So we ask the question, okay, it's a projection, things could change. How much would costs have to go down in order for this project without assistance to be within that return range or to be around that average, that 13.1% average? And the answer to that question is we need about a 44% decrease in costs. How about revenues? If revenues were higher, how much would it take to get this into the market range? And the answer to that is 79%. Combination of both, about 29% of each. These are levels that we think are not likely to be realized, and so we do come to the conclusion that the project would not likely occur in the current market without assistance. One of the things also that we're asked to do, and this becomes more of a statutory requirement at the project plan level, but we had the information available, so we thought it made sense to go ahead and share it with you now, is what is a feasibility study. And I will tell you the feasibility study, for the purpose of this, our projections come mostly from the developer. We do look at them for reasonableness, but we base the projections mostly on the developer's financial advisor and their team. As I mentioned earlier, there is a market feasibility study that is done as part of the bond issue. It will be obviously more informative because it will have, it'll be based on the actual leases and the actual land sale contracts. But the purpose of the feasibility study, as required by statute, is to determine whether the TIF and the CID revenues are likely to meet or exceed the reimbursable project costs. It's important to recognize it's a forecast, and actual results may vary, but the projection shows that the developer may come up, at this point, based on the information we have, may come up just a bit short of being able to have revenues that support bonds capable of reimbursing them for the full $19.5 million. It's kind of several $100,000 short. If this were to happen, what that basically would require is that the developer would need to come up with a slightly higher private investment to make the project happen. This is something that we have talked with the development team about, and they understand and have agreed that they will do so. We've already talked about the project benefits. Some next steps. Planning Commission will take up the rezoning. There's a rezoning required for the multifamily, the mixed-use piece. That's on June 18th. On June 20th, you're scheduled to hold a special meeting specifically just to approve a notice for the public hearing on the project plan. And then on the 23rd of July, it all comes back to you with the rezoning, the public hearing and considering the ordinance on the project plan. At that time, the Community Improvement District will be before you, and I'm projected to have the revised development agreement. We already have one. It'll be a revision, a revised development agreement before you as well. But again, for tonight, you have two tasks: hold the public hearing and then consider the ordinance establishing the TIF district. That concludes my remarks. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions from council? Lindsay?
On the calendar, I don't have the 20th on my calendar. Is that? Sorry. Well, so it'll be part of the thing that we're already here for.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Comments?
I'm sorry. Quick correction. The rezoning will be at the July 2nd City Council. Is that right? Oh. Planning. July 2nd planning.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the correction. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak to this item? All right. Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry. Please come forward. State your name, your address. You have 5 minutes.
Name's Alan Godsey, live at 6800 Bell Road in Shawnee, Kansas. We are pretty much one of the neighbors, next door neighbors to this particular project. So I had a question, the 19.5 million in special obligation bonds. Last year when this was done, there was an additional $40 million in interest that had to be paid over the 20-year term. Where's that interest this time? How much? Okay. All right, so from a high level, I'd like to ask the question, why are we here? What's this about? Because there was an approved project last year and everything was green light and go. I think the answer appears to be that the project from last year, the developer came back and asked for more money. And someone screwed up, basically. And the first time around. So I think that point needs to be raised here. I don't know if the document that was online talked about the blighted area of this. There were a whole lot of pictures in there of homes, and one of the guys had a bunch of junk in his yard up there. Kind of wondering why the city didn't do something about that. And in one of the exhibits, there were a whole bunch of pictures of a house that was owned by Mr. Steve Beaumont, who's listed as part of the development team for Legacy. We happen to know the renters that were renting that property, and they told us that basically he wouldn't fix anything. He's letting the place go. And the neighbors have complained in between renters, the place wasn't being mowed and all of this. Looked terrible, and neighbors weren't happy about it. So I guess, this association really doesn't speak too well to this project, as far as I'm concerned. We still haven't seen any final plans on this project. We're aware that they want to do high-density apartments, and they want to put them pretty much right up against our neighborhood. I just want to say again that, we're not happy about that idea, and we think we're getting into some golden factor problems too, as far as we're concerned. I'd like to say that I'm personally very opposed to publicly financing development projects for the greater good of private developers. I would also like to say I'm particularly opposed to publicly financing housing developments, especially in a case like this, where they will be paying a fraction of the real estate taxes over this period of 20 years that this thing's going to extend for. And I guess my final comment is socialized housing, simply amazing. Thank you for your time. Oh, I need to answer that question. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Is there anybody from the development team that would, oh, wait. Please come forward, state your name, your address.
My name is Don Lysett. I live at 6850 Bell Road, which is roughly a quarter mile south, if that far, of this proposed project. Been here a number of times. I don't want to belabor this. I think it's very obvious what's going to occur here tonight. But I want to, I had the same question Al Godsey asked, because last year it sticks in my mind that when the question was asked by Mr. Jenkins, well, what is the total cost of this, not the 19.5 or the $21 million? At the end of the road, it's more, at that time, in the vicinity of about $45 million. That's a lot of money. I'm guessing with the costs and everything else, the increased interest rates, that's going to be pushing closer to $50 million, which obviously is even more money. I assume you all are aware of that, but I feel compelled to bring that out because that is a lot of money for this city to be putting out there and investing in. I want to just very briefly touch upon the history of this, having gone back now 4 years plus. The very first project that came on this site, 2014, was for $175,000. They had requested a TIF of about $12 million. For various reasons, that didn't fly. Land sat fallow for a while. Current developer came in, and about a year ago, project was going to be 315,000 square feet, ballpark. We're now up to almost 420,000 square feet between the apartments, the square footage of the apartments, the square footage of the commercial, the pad sites. The entire site is right at $420,000. So in 3 years plus, projects increased density-wise almost 200%. And to getting to Mr. Godsey's point, I think we got the cart before the horse here. Why haven't we decided on, yes, we're going to let this person build this, as opposed to we're going to give them the money to build it? And again, to echo a point of Mr. Godsey, I personally am generally opposed, there are appropriate uses, for the use of TIF financing, that type of thing. But I find it very troublesome. They're now coming back and they're seeking that financing for private residences, apartments, that the property tax benefit to the city is negligible at best. If this project, and I've met several times with Mr. Lowe, we've tried to work with him, and we're still trying to work with him. We have been told repeatedly, these apartments are the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's what the millennials want. Small, everything there. Well, if they're that good, let it stand alone. Takes me back to my point. I don't understand why we're trying to give away money before we know what we're giving away money for. Those are my comments. I would be curious to know, I don't know if Joe had a chance yet to put pen to pencil or pen to paper and determine what the total cost is. Because again, we're talking a whole lot of money. We're talking on the apartment side of things, a very niche area, if you will. And I don't think that's where the city should be spending its money. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lysett. Do we have any comments from the development team?
Council President, members of the council, Greg Musil, 5250 West 116th Place, Suite 400 in Leawood, Kansas. I do want to speak on behalf of the development team, and we have here with us Heather Trower from Legacy Development, John Hanson from IRR, and Steve Beaumont is here as well if you have specific questions from members of the team. Just speak to a couple of this. You guys have been through this for years. Councilmember, you've been lucky. I guess you haven't been through it for years. But when I was on your side of the dais for 8 years, it always struck me, why does it take so long to get a development done? Why do market fluctuations make a difference? Why is timing important? Why is this long process necessary? And I've learned more on the other side that I didn't know when I was a young council member who thought I knew everything, that there are timing issues, there are market issues, there are process issues. And Mr. Lysett brought up the process that we've been through, and I think what I would urge you to consider is that each time we've gone through a step in this process, from the Great Wall of China to what we have today, the project has improved. It has responded not only to the demands of Shawnee residents, who when we had our first public meeting a year ago said, we need more restaurants. We need more sit-down restaurants to incorporate this restaurant plaza, to the market that you see all over the area that has developed mixed use. We don't do very well on vertical mixed use in this market, and I'm not sure the Midwest ever will. But we can do a good job on horizontal mixed use, where I can have an apartment and I can walk, whether I'm a millennial or an empty nester or whatever. So this project incorporates new things. The development community, the lending community learns new things every day about what works. And that's their job, because if they don't learn those, they're not going to make any money for their customer, their client, or themselves. The apartments here are not high-density apartments. You know your code. These are medium-density apartments. They are a traditional buffer from any single-family neighborhood. Before, there was an office building in the southwest corner of the project, and when this comes back to you from Planning Commission, whatever the Planning Commission recommendation, you're going to see the elevations of the apartments, and you're going to see the distance from the property line to the first building. And these apartments aren't on top of single-family homes, but they're what the market is looking for today. The apartments will pay their full property tax. They're not going to pay at a 25% assessment rate like commercial does. They'll pay at 11.5% residential. So they don't generate as much property tax, which means they're not generating as much property tax in the increment to finance the project. I think there are a couple key points tonight. This is one step in the process, a process that's gone on a long time, but you're going to see a rezoning. The Planning Commission has to act on the rezoning and a revised preliminary plan. The Planning Commission has to act on whether or not this plan is compatible with your comprehensive plan. If those things are true, then on July 23rd, they will come back to you for your determination of whether the project plan for this specific development and the development plan itself and the financing plan, including a revised redevelopment agreement, makes sense. All those things have to fall into place. Tonight, you're setting the boundaries. You're creating a district in the exact same place you created a district a year ago. I think it is important to note that because of the reset of this, that the Shawnee Mission School District will benefit by recapturing the 8 mills because of the change in the law last July 1st. That didn't affect our initial application. I mean, that's a benefit, something that the school district has been fighting for and actually led the fight for in the legislature. Mr. Chaffee received an email this afternoon from the Coopers, who have been very active in this because they live right next to us on Mauer Road, and they indicated to Mr. Chaffee by email that they don't oppose the project. We've been working with them, trying to figure out and make sure it is beneficial to their project, both in the short and long term. There's no change in the amount of incentive that is being requested today, in the total amount of incentive requested, than there was a year ago. It's still $19.5 million with interest, as every TIF project or other incentivized project will include the interest and financing costs. We are increasing the CID sales tax. The 8 mills goes back to Shawnee Mission. And the other change in the economics is an additional $33 million of investment in the project to take it from $59 million to $92 million. I think that's a benefit to the city of Shawnee to have that additional investment in your city. The dollars that are at risk are private dollars. They're dollars to the bond holders. They're dollars to the developer who puts its own money in. Now, I know, and Tom spoke to the fact that there's a concern about embarrassment to the city, and certainly if a project that you incentivize doesn't work as it was projected, and even the coverage ratio and the reserves aren't sufficient, there can be embarrassment. I lived through the one in Overland Park at Corbin Park, which is a private foreclosure. And that was an embarrassment for several years. But look at what has happened since then, because the infrastructure was in place to make it happen. And the first thing you have to have is that infrastructure. You have to have the streets, you have to have the buildings, you have to have the storm drainage. All of those things will be done if this project is approved. Your public policy question, and it's a tough one for lots of cities and lots of you on this council, is do we want a development similar to this at this site today or really ever? Because what we have learned over the last 5 or 10 years, or since this project has been in place and everything around it has developed, is that this site has special constraints. It will not be developed without some public incentives. And if the public incentive amount is right, you can get a development that you'll be proud of and that the citizens of Shawnees will be able to benefit from, and that people from other cities will come into, because the same commitments are going to be there this time that were there last year. These are going to be new stores to the city of Shawnee. I know that the city manager, I know that Ellis, I know that Joe are not going to let us change those requirements, that these are new stores, new retailers, new restaurants to the city of Shawnee, so that we're bringing in new revenue and new vitality to your city. So I'm pretty competitive. I love to come up here and say I want a unanimous vote on everything I do in front of every city council or every county commission. I'm not stupid enough to think that's the case. But I need 5 of you tonight to come through and say, let's take the next step, so that we can look at the details of the plan, both where the buildings are going to be, what they're going to look like, when they're going to be built, how they're going to be built, and then the financing details that Tom went through. All of which will be scrutinized by the bond market way more than any of us can do in any public meeting before they'll ever say, I will buy your bond. So I'd be happy to stand for questions. I'll be happy to sit down for questions. The development team is here to provide any information that would be helpful to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Any questions or comments from the council? All right. Seeing none, we're ready to close the public hearing. I'll ask for a motion. I'm sorry, Tom.
I'm going to provide as best I can the answers to the question. So the question was, how much in interest do we anticipate? So a few, obviously remarks before. It's a forecast at this point. We don't know exactly how much we're borrowing because we don't have the revenue study. We don't know what the interest rate will be. But the estimate at this point is about 15 million. And when you think about it, when you buy your house, when you buy your car, and you get that truth in lending statement, right, that shows you how much you're actually going to pay, so that's not too surprising. As a general rule, if you're borrowing 20 years for something like this, generally you're paying about as much in interest as you're paying in principal.
Thank you, Tom. All right. Any other comments, questions? I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Final action tonight is to adopt ordinance number 3226, establishing the Belmont Promenade Redevelopment District. Does anyone on the council have any questions? So anybody in the audience have any questions?
Just a comment.
Yeah.
Just
Mr.
a
Jenkins.
comment that, as I understand it, we are voting to establish the boundaries for the TIF. This is not a okay of the project. We're still going to see all the project specifications, and all the additional data is going to be provided to us at a future date. So at this point, if we're just looking at establishing the district boundaries, it seems like a reasonable thing to do.
Yeah, to confirm, that is correct. All we're talking about is boundaries tonight. We're not talking about finances or anything else, just the geographic boundaries of the project. Any other comments? I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes with one dissenting vote from Mr. Kemling. Next item on the agenda is G, items from the Planning Commission meeting of May 21st, 2018. Item number 1 is to approval of SUP-06-18-05, a special use permit for Car City Wholesale to operate a used motor vehicle sales lot at 6801 Hedge Lane Terrace. On May 21st, 2018, the Planning Commission recommended 9-0 that the governing body approve the special use permit, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. Is there any discussion from council? Any comments from the public? I'll accept a motion.
Move for approval.
Motion has been made and seconded on the item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 2 is to consider approval of SUP-07-18-05, a special use permit for the Fleet Learning Station a commercial child care center located at 5416 Martindale. On May 21st, 2018, the Planning Commission recommended 9-0 that the governing body approve this special use permit, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. Any discussions from the council? Any comments from the audience? Seeing none, I will accept a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on the item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 3 is to approving SUP-08-18-05, a special use permit for a standalone integrated teller machine in the Staggs Creek development located at 10900 Shawnee Mission Parkway. On May 21st, 2018, the Planning Commission recommended 9-0 that the governing body approve the special use permit subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. Is there any discussion from the council? Any comments from the audience? I'll accept a motion.
Motion approved.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion passes. Item 4 is to ordinance number 3227, PUD-01-18-05, rezoning from planned unit development mixed residential and planned unit development mixed use to planned unit development mixed residential and preliminary development plan for Veterans Park, located in the 6,000 to 6,100 blocks of Flum Road. Excuse me. On May 21st, 2018, the Planning Commission recommended 9-0 that the governing body approve PUD-01-1805, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. An ordinance is required. Community Development Director Chaffee and the applicant are here tonight if there are any questions. Is there any discussion from the council? Any discussion from the audience? Seeing none, I will accept a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Yes. Good. Talk to us when we get this on.
Next item on the agenda is staff items. Item number 1 is to consider ordinance number 3228, renewing a franchise agreement with Consolidated Communications Enterprise Services Incorporated. On June 25th, 2012, the governing body passed ordinance number 3030, granting a franchise to SureWest to provide telecommunications services within the city. On November 9th, 2015, the governing body adopted resolution number 1764, approving the transfer of the franchise to Consolidated Communications Enterprise Services Incorporated. The original franchise expires on June 30th, 2018. Under the new franchise, the city will continue to receive 5% of gross receipts. An ordinance is required. Recommended action is to consider passing ordinance number 3228. Is there any discussion from the council? Any comments from the audience? Seeing none, I will accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 2 is to consider, whoa,
Oh.
did you put some training wheels on me?
Some paper towels
Item 2.
before we destroy all the
Item
electronics.
2 is to consider contract number 2018-0063, a wireline pole agreement with Westar Energy Incorporated. As part of the city's fiber design options, staff is examining aerial fiber alternatives to complete an aerial design and cost estimate. The city must enter into a wireline pole agreement with Westar. The recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Any discussion from council? Thank you. Caitlin. Any
Is-
comments from
Is
the
Mel here?
audience?
Mel, we good with this? Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I will accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. All right.
That's why we can't have nice things.
No, not anymore. Thank you, Stephen. My apologies. Item 3 is to consider bids and award contract number 2018-0064 for the Johnson Drive Rehabilitation Project, I-435 to Martindale, PN 3443. Final plans were approved on April 23, 2018, and 6 bids were received. Staff is recommending awarding the bid to Kansas Heavy Construction in the amount of $1,934,031.60. The recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Is there any discussion from the council? Mr. Neighbor.
Yeah, I just would point out that, first, I appreciate everybody on the bids, and thank you to staff, because this came in $500,000 under the engineer estimate, so that's saving us money to use other places.
Any other comments from council? Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, I will accept a motion.
So moved?
Motion has been made and seconded on the item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 4 is to consider bids and award contract number 2018-0065 for the 53rd Street Improvement Project, Woodsonia to Roberts, PN 3439. Final plans were approved on April 23, 2018, and 10 bids were received. Staff is recommending awarding the contract to VF Anderson Builders in the amount of $417,120.55. The recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Is there any discussion from the council? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I will accept a motion.
So moved?
Second. Second. A motion has been made and seconded on the item. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 5 is consider bids and award contract number 2018-0066 to Centric for the Civic Center ADA bathroom and front desk upgrades, PN CL 3454. Final plans were approved on May 14th, 2018, and 3 bids were received. Staff is recommending awarding the bid to Centric in the amount of $222,333. The recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Is there any discussion from the council? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I will accept a motion.
Motion approved.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 6 is to consider approving supplemental agreement number 3 with Strata Architecture for O.W. Fisher Chevrolet Dealership and Murphy Service Station buildings in Shawneetown, 1929. This project is on the capital improvement plan and includes period replication of 2 buildings in Shawneetown, 1929. Supplemental agreement number 3 includes redesign of the buildings in the amount of $14,240 for a revised total cost of $67,194.68. The recommended action is to consider approving supplemental agreement number 3. Is there any discussion from the council? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I will accept a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 7 is to consider approving addendum number 4 to the professional services agreement with George Butler and Associates for the 6200 block of Neiman Culvert improvements, project PN 3401, SMAC TC-21-070. On October 10th, 2016, the governing body approved a professional services agreement with George Butler Associates for engineering, design, and construction services related to the project. Addendum number 4 reflects an increase for additional engineering services in an amount of $78,985. Final contract amount will now be $1,135,135. Recommended action is to consider approving addendum number 4. Is there any discussion from the council? Any comments from the public? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
The motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 8 is to consider approving final plans for the 59th Terrace Project, King to Barton, PN 3446. This project is on the city's capital improvement plan. Final plans are complete, and the estimated cost of the project is $435,000. is funded through CDBG, Special Revenue and General Funds. The project is ready to bid. The recommended action is to consider approving the final plans and authorizing staff to bid the project. Is there any discussion from the council? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I will accept a motion.
Move for approval.
A motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is miscellaneous items. Item number 1 is to ratify the semi-monthly claims for June 11th, 2018 in the amount of $3,662,066.36. Any discussion from the council? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I will accept a motion.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 2 is miscellaneous council items. Anyone on the council have an item they would like to discuss? Yes, Mr. Neighbor.
Huge thanks to staff.
Matt.
Amen to that. Mickey.
Also, in regards to Old Shawnee Days, I would like to thank the Parks and Rec Department and the city. It was a fabulous event, and I'll tell you what, it took everybody to put it on, and it was great. Thank you all. And thanks for everybody that came. There was probably, I would think Saturday was the single most amount of people ever in that town at one time. I would have to say it was, everybody did a great job. Thanks.
Agreed. Anyone in the audience who would like to speak?
Just a quick comment up here. I don't know whether you keep finding all these old relic dinosaur rock stars, but it was great. We enjoyed the heck out of it. Those guys did a great job.
They make me feel young anyway.
I know, I am feeling young. That's pretty scary.
All right, no more items. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes and we are adjourned.
Did not take all 15 of them, but you never know.